Now for the news in detail. In the U.S., the coronavirus death toll has surpassed 71,000 after 2,333 more died in the past 24 hours. Brazil has posted a record 600 deaths in a day. Worldwide, the death toll has exceeded 257,000, with over 3.5 million people infected. More on that now in this report.
As COVID-19 rattles economies, many governments have announced to partially or completely lift lockdowns, risking virus spread. U.S. President Donald Trump says opening up the economy is essential, while confessing more Americans will die after lifting restrictions.
It's possible there will be some, because you won't be locked into an apartment or a house or whatever it is, but at the same time, we're going to practice social distancing, we're going to be washing hands, we're going to be doing a lot of the things that we've learned to do over the last period of time. And we have to get our country back. You know, people are dying the other way too.
The German federal government and states have agreed on ways to ease lockdowns. As the UK becomes Europe's worst-hit country by COVID-19, London said second stage of the virus response will not be easy. Foreign Minister Dominic Raab said people must adjust to a new normal to avoid a second peak.
And as we consider the decisions that we will take next to protect life, but also to protect our way of life, it's now clear that the second phase will be different. We will need to adjust to a new normal where we as a society adapt to safe new ways to work, to travel, to interact, and to go about our daily lives.
Meanwhile, a few countries, including Japan and Lebanon, have extended their lockdowns and state emergencies over fears of a second wave of COVID-19.
Well, Pakistan has recorded its highest number of deaths from COVID-19 in a single day, as 40 people lost their lives to the disease. The health ministry has reported over 1,000 infection cases in the last 24 hours. The ministry said the death toll in the country stands at 526, while infection cases are at 22,550. It said over 232,000 tests have been conducted countrywide, with nearly 10,200 since yesterday. The National Coordination Committee will meet today to make a decision regarding the relaxation of the lockdown after Saturday. The Information Minister, Shibli Faraz, said all 4 chief ministers will attend the meeting and deliberate on the next strategy. Indian forces have martyred 2 more civilians in Pulwama district of occupied Kashmir. The forces have martyred 16 Kashmiris over the past 2 weeks in different areas of the valley. The troops targeted the youth during a cordon and search operation in Harsali village in Awantipura area. Local officials said occupation forces started the operation early in the morning and that it is still underway. In the last few weeks, troops have intensified brutalities in occupied Kashmir despite the COVID-19 pandemic. The occupied valley has been reeling under New Delhi's curfew and communications blackout that has been in place for the past 275 days. The Indian government has extended former Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti's detention for 3 months. Top Kashmiri politicians and pro-freedom leaders have been detained for the last 9 months under the Public Safety Act. In a statement, New Delhi said it extended the detention under the public order provisions of the Act. Authorities have also extended the detention of 2 other Kashmiri politicians, including Mufti's uncle Sartaj Madani. Commenting on the development, Mufti's daughter said stifling voices of reason have become the norm, especially after the revocation of Article 370. In a tweet, Iltija Mufti said she is not surprised by the extension of her mother's detention. She said it is wishful thinking, though, to assume that by smothering any debate on Article 370, the issue will vanish. U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper says the Taliban are not living up to their commitments under the Doha peace deal. Speaking to media in Washington, Esper said he believes the Afghan government is also not fulfilling its obligations. He said both Kabul and the Taliban need to come together and make progress on the terms which are laid out. Meanwhile, the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction has said the U.S. does not consider certain attacks on Afghan forces as a violation of the Doha deal. In a tweet, it said the agreement does not prohibit all Taliban attacks against Afghan security forces. This comes after the Taliban chief negotiator, Sher Abbas Stanigzai, said the ceasefire with U.S. forces is intact, but there is no such deal with Afghan forces. In an interview, Stanigzai said a separate agreement would be signed with Kabul for a ceasefire and reduction in violence, but not before intra-Afghan talks. The chief negotiator said fighting is not one-sided, but government forces are also attacking the Taliban. He blamed Afghan and U.S. forces for the violence, saying they have not met the conditions for intra-Afghan dialogue. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani says Tehran will give a crushing response if the arms embargo on the country is extended. Speaking at an event in Tehran, Rouhani said U.S. President Donald Trump made a stupid mistake by pulling out of the 2015 nuclear deal. The president said Washington should lift all sanctions on Iran if it wants to return to the deal. He said Iran would not ignore the U.S.'s violation of UNSC Resolution 2231 if it takes Tehran's case to the international bloc. Rouhani said whenever parties to the JCPOA return to their full obligations, Iran will also honor the deal. Iraq says 3 rockets have landed near Baghdad International Airport. In a statement, the Iraqi military said it found a rocket launcher with a timer in a rural area in western Baghdad. This is the first such attack since last month's strike on the American oil service company Halliburton site in Basra. Since the start of this year, there have been nearly 12 rocket attacks on Iraq's Green Zone, but no group has claimed responsibility for any of those raids. Israel says it has targeted multiple locations in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli Defense Forces said they struck 3 Hamas posts in retaliation to rocket fire. No casualties have been reported so far. Defense Minister Naftali Bennett has said Israel will continue its operations in Syria as well until its archenemy Iran leaves. In an interview, Bennett said Iran used to be an asset for the Syrians, but now it is a burden. Bennett's remarks come after several Israeli missiles struck a military depot in Syria's northern province of Aleppo. In Yemen, the Saudi-led coalition has accused Houthi rebels of violating a ceasefire that was enforced on April 9th. In a statement, spokesperson Turki al-Maliki said the missiles were fired from the capital Sana'a towards the Amran and Saada governorates. Al-Maliki said Houthis are violating international humanitarian law by launching ballistic missiles that fall indiscriminately on civilians. The spokesman said the ceasefire violations with all kinds of weapons and missile attacks have multiplied exponentially. Al-Maliki said the coalition would continue to take deterrent measures against Houthis' ballistic capabilities in order to protect civilians. In the UAE, a fire has engulfed a skyscraper in Sharjah, with debris falling on cars and the streets below. Health officials say they are treating 7 people for minor injuries from the fire in the 48-story tower, in the Al Nahda area. Firefighters worked to put out the blaze in the Abco tower using at least a dozen fire engines and drones. There are no immediate reports of the likely cause of the fire. At least 5 buildings nearby were evacuated during the fire. Libya's UN-recognized Government of National Accord says Khalifa Haftar's forces have killed 2 civilians in an attack on Tripoli. In a statement, the health ministry said Haftar militias hit a house in the Al-Hadba region. The strikes came after GNA forces made advancements to recapture the strategic Al-Watiya airbase. Meanwhile, the International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda, has warned of potential war crimes in Libya. Bensouda told the Security Council it has been over a year that civilians are being targeted largely from airstrikes and shelling operations. She said intentionally attacking civilians not taking part in direct hostilities is a war crime under the Rome Statute. Well, the U.S. has denied its involvement in what Venezuela has called a failed armed incursion. This follows the arrest of 2 Americans in Venezuela after they allegedly claimed responsibility for the foiled operation. At a White House briefing, President Donald Trump said the U.S. government will find out the facts. The Pentagon has also denied any involvement in the incident, saying it does not accept the account at face value. At a Pentagon briefing, Defense Secretary Mark Esper accused the Venezuelan government of a highly questionable representation of the details. Earlier, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro said U.S. citizens were involved in a plot allegedly coordinated with Washington in order to oust him. He said the operation was carried out after the signing of an agreement with the U.S.-backed Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido. I'll be back after this break with plenty more news. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In India, thousands of migrant workers have begun their journey back to their homes after the government refused to extend help. Workers have been stuck across the country after Prime Minister Narendra Modi imposed a sudden curfew in March. The workers, along with their families, are going from southern Karnataka to the northern state of Uttar Pradesh. The migrants said they have paid for their own train tickets to head home, even after the government had pledged to pay for them. Meanwhile, Delhi has imposed a special tax of 70% on retail liquor purchases to deter large gatherings at shops. Police baton charged hundreds of people who flocked to liquor shops when they opened earlier this week after the 6-week lockdown. Top U.S. scientist Dr. Anthony Fauci has dismissed claims that COVID-19 was created in a laboratory in the Chinese city of Wuhan. Fauci says there is also no scientific evidence of the possibility that the virus had accidentally escaped from a lab. In an interview, Fauci said the virus was in the wild, and its evolution in bats strongly indicates it couldn't have been artificially or deliberately manipulated. He said everything about stepwise evolution strongly indicates the virus evolved in nature and then jumped species. Meanwhile, the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman, General Mark Milley, says there is no conclusive evidence the virus was intentionally released.
The weight of evidence, nothing's conclusive. The weight of evidence is that it was natural and not man-made. Secondly, the second issue is, was it accidentally released? Did it release naturally into the environment, or was it intentional? We don't have conclusive evidence in any of that, but the weight of evidence is that it was probably not intentional.
Well, just last week, U.S. President Donald Trump had claimed to have seen evidence indicating COVID-19 came from a lab in the Chinese city of Wuhan. Well, the COVID-19 pandemic is transforming how workplaces operate. Businesses are learning how to operate with staff working remotely, and office meetings have been replaced with video conferences. But how will the post-coronavirus office space look like? More in this report.
While countries have begun emerging from lockdowns, the novel coronavirus continues to be a threat. As such, workplaces must take steps to prevent themselves from becoming a viral hotspot. The international real estate firm Cushman & Wakefield has overseen return of nearly 1 million employees to its offices in China. The company has come up with a workplace design concept that may help workplaces transition into the post-COVID-19 era.
It comes down to some basic concepts, things like colored carpet, or in a less sophisticated or expensive application, taping off what 6 feet workstations look like. So it's very visual. In some cases, installing plexiglass or some other form of sneeze or cough guards to give folks additional insurance. And we've seen a lot of that in retail applications already, of course.
The company's concept focuses on the 6 feet of social distancing rule, applying it to workplaces to keep areas around desks empty. They've built a prototype of their design in their Amsterdam office, where it is pitched to clients. Organizational psychologist Brad Bell warns such protocols may be detrimental to employees' mental health.
In my own research, we've found that the more isolation that employees experience or perceive, that has a negative impact on a number of important outcomes. Their satisfaction with their work. I think it can certainly lead to stress. It can undermine well-being. I mean, we're inherently kind of social animals.
It is likely many industries will adopt measures similar to the ones being sold by Cushman and Wakefield. But around the world, both employees and businesses are also seeing the benefits of working from home. There are also the environmental benefits of the reduced traffic to consider, which have been well documented over the past 2 weeks. Regardless, what's certain right now is that our workplaces have changed forever.
French beekeepers are celebrating a bumper honey harvest. They say they've just had their best season in 4 decades, but are finding it hard to sell their product due to the COVID-19 lockdown. More on that now in this report.
It's been a hot spring in France, with temperatures reaching 30 degrees Celsius. This is more typical of early summer. This weather has been a boon for beekeepers who have just had their best harvest in decades. A single beehive can produce 4 to 6 kilograms of honey. In a good year, this figure might rise to 10 kilograms. But this year, northern and western France hives produced up to 20 kilograms each.
When the harvests are not great, we get around 4 to 6 kilograms from each beehives. It can go up to 10 kgs, and maybe a little more. But now we're reaching 20 kgs on average, only with the spring harvest, which will surpass the harvest of last year, from the whole season from spring to summer, when we had a very bad harvest. And this year, we have already surpassed it, only with the spring harvest.
Currently, France is keeping open-air markets closed to halt the spread of the coronavirus. This makes it increasingly difficult for the beekeepers to sell their stock.
On the production side, we will have an excellent harvest, so we will have stocks when the lockdown ends. And when everything goes back to normal, we will get back to work, and these will be sold in any case. But this period is quite difficult.
For now, their easiest option is to hold on to their stock and sell it when the lockdown ends.
We are wearing masks. We wear it as soon as we're behind the stand and when we talk to people. We set up cell phone sheets to separate the customers from us so that people don't touch the jars. We ourselves serve the customers. We also set up little trays here for people to pay. And then we take back the money and we give them their change on another tray. We're trying to not have direct contact with people.
The National Union of French Beekeeping notes that climate change has made harvests unpredictable. A hostile summer may change the year's output.
The U.S. space agency NASA says Hollywood action star Tom Cruise is working on a movie to be shot in outer space. In a tweet, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine said the space agency is excited to work with Tom Cruise on a film aboard the space station. He said popular media is needed to inspire a new generation of engineers and scientists to make NASA's ambitious plans a reality. A media report said Cruise is working with the SpaceX entrepreneur Elon Musk to make the first feature film to be shot in space. He said the proposed action adventure is in its early stages. Tom Cruise is renowned for his daredevil films and for doing his own stunts. China's foreign ministry says tariffs should not be used as a weapon as they damage all parties involved. The ministry's spokeswoman, Hua Chunying, said the U.S. should stop shifting its responsibilities over COVID-19. She also said accusations of China deliberately spreading the virus are baseless. The statement comes after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to impose tariffs on China last week. Trade talks between the UK and the US have begun via video conference nearly 4 years after the Brexit vote to depart the EU. The UK is attempting to negotiate a deal with the US, the EU and other trading partners before the Brexit transition period ends in December 31st this year. The UK's Department for International Trade says a deal with the US will help nearly 6 million small businesses. In a statement, the UK International Trade Secretary Liz Truss says increasing transatlantic trade can also help resuscitate COVID-19-stricken economies. According to trade objectives published by Washington's negotiators over a year ago, the US wants full access to UK markets and minimal tariffs. European markets are trading mixed as investors speculate over the probability of economic revival as many countries ease lockdown restrictions. London's FTSE 100 is trading nearly 0.5% higher after the British insurer Hiscox stocks jumped nearly 8%, I should say. CAC 40 in Paris and DAX in Frankfurt are both trading fractionally lower. In Asia, Seoul's Kospi led the gains, closing over 1.5% higher after shares of automaker Hyundai Motor jumped about 2%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index and the Shanghai Composite edged higher. Meanwhile, international benchmark Brent crude oil price has gained over 3%, pairing early losses. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. And for the latest updates on these and other stories, you can always follow us on our social media at Indus Special. Thanks for watching.